Krishna Hare 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 Rama 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 Hare 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 Krishna 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 Hare 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 Rama 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 Hare Hare
सहना भवतु सहनौ भुनक्तु सह वीर्यङ्करवावहै तेजस्विनावधीतमस्तु मा विद्विषावहै ॐ शान्ति शान्ति शान्तिः। श्रीगीता ध्यानम्। ॐ पार्थाय प्रतिबोधितां भगवता नारायणेन स्वयं व्यासेन ग्रथितां पुराणमुनिना मध्ये महाभारतम् अद्वैतामृतवर्षिणीं भगवतीम् अष्टादशाध्यायिनीम् अम्ब त्वामनुसन्धनामि भगवद्गीते भवद्वेषिणी। नमोऽस्तु ते व्यासविशालबुद्धे पुल्लारविन्दायतपत्रनेत्रा येन त्वया भारततैलपूर्णः प्रज्वालितो ज्ञानमयप्रदीपः प्रपन्नपारिजाताय स्तोत्रवैत्रेकपाणये ज्ञानमुद्राय कृष्णाय गीतामृतदुहे नमः। सर्वोपनिषदो गावो दोग्धा गोपालनन्दनः पार्थो वत्सः सुधीर्भोक्ता दुग्धं गीतामृतं महत् वसुदेवसुतं देवं कंसचाणूरमर्दनम् देवकी परमानन्दं कृष्णं वन्दे जगद्गुरुम्। भीष्मद्रोणतटा जयद्रथजला गान्धारनीलोत्पला शल्यग्राहवती कृपेण वहनी कर्णेन वेलाकुला अश्वत्थामविकर्णघोरमकरा दुर्योधनावर्तिनी सोत्तीर्णा खलु पाण्डवैरननदी कैवर्तककेशवः पाराशर्यवचः सरोजममलं गीतार्थगन्धोत्कटम् नानाख्यानककेसरं हरिकथा सम्बोधनाबोधितम् लोके सज्जन षट्परैरहरहः पीपीयमानं मुदा भूयात् भारत पङ्कजं कलिमल प्रध्वंसिन श्रेयसे मूकं करोति वाचालं पङ्गुं लङ्घयति गिरिं यत्कृपातमहं वन्दे परमानन्दमाधवम् यं ब्रह्मा वरुणीन्द्ररुद्रमरुतः स्तुवन्ति दिव्यैस्तवैः वेदैः साङ्गपदक्रमोपनिषदैः गायन्ति यं सामगाः ध्यानावस्थिततद्गतेन मनसा पश्यन्ति यं योगिनो यस्यान्तं न विदुः सुरासुरगणा देवाय तस्मै नमः देवाय तस्मै नमः देवाय तस्मै नमः।
Hari Om. So I noticed, a lot of people who normally attend regularly are not there for the last, I think, 2, 3, maybe 4 satsang. I sincerely hope they are listening, to the recording. I've normally noticed that people who listen to the recording regularly listen to the recording. People who attend satsang and miss it, miss the recording also. That I've noticed in the past. So I sincerely hope quite a few, good number of people are not coming for the last few satsang. I hope they are. So before we started, Amrita asked me, why only 4 verses in this satsang? So now I think she wants to hear more of Sarika's voice and less of my voice. I think it will be the same amount of time. I think it should be almost the same amount of time, just because these verses are so crucial. They are so there's so much depth in these verses, so much meaning, and so crucial. And like we have discussed earlier, in a manner of speaking, chapter 18 is also a summary of the Bhagavad Gita in retrospect. So a lot of the verses that are covered here have been mentioned in the Bhagavad Gita earlier, and they are repeated, and in the context in which they are repeated, and that's why we say summary in retrospect. It is because after learning the entire Bhagavad Gita, some concepts are repeated. It means how crucial those concepts are from a spiritual growth perspective. And also chapter 18 primarily deals with moksha, the yoga of liberation through renunciation, moksha sannyasa yoga. So when we are talking about liberation, that is the culmination of the spiritual journey. And liberation, as we have seen, is twofold. One is Jivan Mukti, which means we are liberated while living in the planet before the life has gone, which means that the person is extremely highly accomplished spiritual human being. And I will not dwell to that right now, because that itself will become one satsang. So we know what that means, how a person gets there. And by the way, today's satsang, we will cover that also. We will talk about this, about that also. So yeah, and the other is Videha Mukti, which is once you go and you don't come back, when the soul has attained ultimate redemption, when you get ultimate liberation, when the soul does not return. And so those are the culmination of a spiritual journey, of the human being's life, because the human being is the one that is attuned to attaining liberation. It is the highest among the species in terms of evolution. When we say highest, what we mean is that the mind and the intellect are highly evolved, and we are able to plan, we are able to think, we are able to think about, we are able to plan, we are able to study, we are able to execute, we are able to modulate our life to work towards finding that mukti, whatever it may be, Jivan Mukti or Videha Mukti. Oftentimes we see other species are not doing that. Maybe they are doing that without our knowledge. Human science may have not advanced to that extreme levels. Maybe they are doing. So let's not sit here and judge. But we know that we are doing it and we can do it. And from those points of view, these few verses, the second half of the 18th chapter, are extremely crucial. And that is why we are taking our time. Okay. So I've already taken a little bit time, which was unplanned. Thanks to Amrita for the question. So let's start this satsang. And Bhagavan says, we'll do, as always, a quick brief revision of the last satsang. He says Swabhavajam, and he says that repeatedly for all the 4 varnas. And when I say he uses the term repeatedly, he does not say Swabhavajam once to be understood for all 4. He makes it a point to use it for each one of them. Swabhavajam means born of their nature. Swabhava. So what is born from the nature? Jam is born. Swabhava is nature. Swa means our own. So our swa, my, when I'm talking about myself, my nature, which is born of my nature or born with me, so to say, right? The duties or the actions that are supposed to be performed but are determined by each one's nature. Nothing else. Nothing else determines our duties. Nothing else determines our actions. Not the family into which we are born, not the country in which we are born, not our heritage. So not our birth, not our heritage. The Shastras do not dictate what we are supposed to do, each human being. It is our nature that determines our Varna. Varna means the four classifications, Brahmana, Kshatriya, Vaishya and Shudra. And it is our nature that determines our Swadharma, our Swakarma, the duties and our actions, or the other way around, Swakarma and Swadharma, our actions and our duties. Bhagavan lays down the duties or karma for each of the four Varnas based on Swabhava. These may seem like, because we have studied earlier, when Bhagavan says some of these, and there are also some of them are repeats, right? They may seem like sampat. Sampat means possession, the spiritual possessions, the divine possessions. Or when we read about sampat, it was Daivi and Asuri sampat. Daivi, divine possession; Asuri, demonic possessions. So possession in terms of our nature that we possess, that it may seem like that, but in reality or actually they are actions. That is why swakarma. They are actions because actions first take place in the mind before they manifest in the physical realm. And in that context, these are swakarma. And Bhagavan says, abhirataha, delightfully devoted. Abhirataha. This relates to, abhirataha relates, as we saw, to the depth, where up till the core we are devoted. We were devoted from the core, devoted from within. And nirataha. Nirataha means always devoted. That relates to time, ever related. So one relates to depth and the other relates to time. Being devoted from within and being devoted always. Sve sve karmani. Devoted to what? In this case, what is Bhagavan talking about? Sve sve karmani. Sve sve, to our respective karmani duties. Being devoted to our duties from the very depth and over time, throughout, always. Sam siddhim labate naraha. A human being attains perfection. We attain perfection by being devoted to our duty. That's very, very critical for us to understand. Yata pravrittir bhutanam. And now he is coming to the next part. Yata pravrittir bhutanam. From whom everything, all of creation, all beings, bhutanam, evolves. Pravrittihi. Yena sarvamidam tatam. By whom everything is prevailed. Entirely, all through 360 degrees, within and without. Tam abhyarcha. Tam, him. This him who is prevailing and from whom everything comes. That him, that entity. Abhyarcha, worshipping. Worshipping him. And how do you worship him? Swakarmana. With whatever one does. Swa, my karmana, actions. Action becomes worship. Work becomes worship. A term that we have often heard, right? Work is worship. That is what this is. Swakarmana tam abhyarcha. Worshipping that creator, that pervader through our duties. Siddhim vindati, attains perfection. Who? Manavaha, a human being. One who is human being in this context is the one who has the mind, who comprehends this aspect. See, there are lots of human beings who don't comprehend this aspect. They are there in that journey. They will get to the stage when they comprehend this aspect. But one needs to comprehend this only when then they will start worshipping the higher, the creator, through the duty. There are other people who worship through flowers, through petals, through water. We have phalam, pushpam, toyam, right? We have seen all that. There are others who worship it by performing sacrifices. There are others who worship in various ways. But Bhagavan says, just worshipping me by performing your duty, you can attain perfection. You will attain perfection. All of us, each one of us, we would have surely experienced in our life situations where we want to escape from duty. do not want to perform. I would rather be in some other place. Bhagavan, why are you keeping me here? Put me somewhere else. Exactly like Arjuna, right? Krishna, let's leave this battlefield, run away to the Himalayas. He didn't want to be there in the battlefield. A warrior like Arjuna, an accomplished warrior, not just an ordinary warrior, an accomplished prince, king, highly accomplished warrior, just did not feel like being in that situation. The same situation where he commanded Krishna to take it. Senayor Ubhayor Madhye Ratham Sthapayam Echyuta. And then after some time, no, please let me go away from you to the Himalayas. So we do not want to be in that place where duty calls. We would rather be anywhere else except where duty calls. And I'm pretty sure each one of us I have experienced that situation. And in spite of what we have learned from Sri Krishna, in spite of what Arjuna has learned from Sri Krishna, still, can we be somewhere else? Can we go and meditate? Can we avoid this job? Can we avoid this work? So can we avoid our Swadharma? Let's see what Bhagavan says for that.
Shreyan swadharmo vigunaha
Shreyan swadharmo vigunaha
paradharmat swanushtitat
paradharmat swanushtitat
swabhavaniyatam karma
svabhavaniyatam karma
kurvanapnoti kilbisham
kurvanapnoti kilbisham.
Shreyan swadharmo vigunaha paradharmat swanushtitat swabhavaniyatam karma kurvanapnoti kilbisham.
Shreyan, better. Swadharmo, one's own duty. Swadharmaha, one's own duty. Swadharmaha. Vigunaha, even if it is without merit. Even when the Swadharma is without merit. We will see a little bit more detail about that. Paradharmat, than the duty of another. Or you can say, than what is not our duty. Paradharmat is duty of another, para another. Paradharmat is what is not our duty. So both context. Swanushtitat, well performed. What is not our duty or what is somebody else's duty, performed extremely well, by the way. Okay. Kurvan, who does. The one who performs, who does. Karma, action or duty. Swabhava niyatam, ordained by one's own nature. So one who does duty ordained by one's nature, which is what? Which is Swadharma. Na, not, apnoti, incur, kilbisham, sin. So Bhagavan is saying, better is one's own duty, even if without merit, than the duty of another well performed. One who does action or duty ordained by one's own nature does not incur sin. So let's see what this paradharma is. Paradharma. Paradharma, that which is not one's duty. Meaning, anything that is not defined as duty by swabhava or varna. Okay. The swadharma of each varna, swadharma of Brahmana, swadharma of Kshatriya, swadharma of Vaishya and swadharma of Shudra. We have gone through it in detail. Bhagavan has defined what the swadharma of each of these classes are. And the people who belong to that class based on their nature. It's a fantastic classification. Very scientific. Okay. As defined by what? The guna, the nature of the person. Having guna, which is the sattva, rajas, tamas. Having the guna of one varna, but performing the duty or job of another varna. That is swadharma. Like Arjuna, who is what? He's a Kshatriya. Whichever way you look at Arjuna, is a Kshatriya. What did he want to do? Go to Himalayas and meditate. He wanted to be a Brahmana. Right? So that kind of a thing. Like our politicians. If you see most of our politicians, they are not Kshatriyas. They are not rulers. They are either, most of them are actually either Vaishyas, which means businessmen, or they are Shudras. They should be serving. The Shudras are meant to be serving. That is their duty. But they are ruling. So one who performs paradharma by hook or by crook. Classic are politicians, right? Some people perform by hook or by crook. Some people perform Swadharma when convenient, when the circumstances are conducive, when there is some selfish gain out of it. And when there is nothing to gain, or when there is problem, under duress, in a flash, they leave their Swadharma. So performing it only for selfish gain. If there is no selfish gain, or if actually there is trouble, wash your hands off and run away. Look somewhere else. For example, a lot of people we see in the modern world, taking care of aged parents till property is there. After that, they don't care for it, right? Politicians enjoying what is called Kshatriya Bhoga. We have read about Kshatriya Bhoga. See, Kshatriyas are willing to give their life for the duty. They will sacrifice their body. That is why you see soldiers saying, like dhava and giving away their body. That is the nature of Kshatriya. But they will, in victory, when the war is done, when the duty is performed, they also enjoy. They live that they enjoy every bit of the Kshatriya Bhoga. But politicians of today, they enjoy the Kshatriya Bhoga to the extent of taking away taxpayers' money. All the sincere taxpayers, their money is treated as personal wealth by the politicians. But when it comes to performing the duty for the nation, they are missing. You just have to travel by road in Bangalore to experience this. Every politician is living is not born rich, living a rich life, but not performing the duty. So people belonging to one varna, but performing the work of another varna. So people belonging to the Vaishya or the Shudra varna, due to their tamasic nature, but working in governance or in teaching or in religion. We find that all over, by the way. Even when you go to some big temples, you will find the priest, you look at the priest and say, is this person a Brahmana? And that's when a lot of people, even I grew up like that, challenging and questioning, and why should I go to the temple? These are the kind of people who are there in the temple. Why should I go to the matam? These are the kind of people who are there in the matam. Don't want to go, you kind of develop an aversion to it. I have grown up like that. So performing a duty which is not conducive to the nature, right? And worse still, people like us, people who are, we see every now and then in our society, who either belong to Kshatriya or Brahmana or even Vaishya Dharma, but they tolerate all this nonsense being perpetuated on them and thereby becoming a Shudra. Their nature is not that, but living that life. Anyway, Swadharma, okay? Let me not give too many examples. Already, I think I've given too much. Swanushti, but it's important to see this and perceive and remember and behave and adjust our own nature accordingly, towards growth. I'm not saying our own nature to perform duty of somebody else. Our own nature to perform our duty. Swanushtitat, even if that paradharma is performed well, even if done well, even if executed well, by hook or by crook, whichever way, Swadharmo Vigunaha, one's own duty, the Swadharma, Vigunaha, even if lacking in merit, Shreyan is better. So Arjuna's duty is to pursue this righteous war, not to go to the Himalayas to meditate, even if it is disadvantageous to him. Death due to opposing unrighteousness, which is the Kauravas representation, right? They represent unrighteousness. For decades, that's what they've indulged in. Fighting that unrighteousness in the battlefield and dying is better for him than a life of meditation, seeking spiritual progress through meditation. He will not even get that spiritual. He will get spiritual progress by fighting in this battle. To work in any field that is dictated by one's own nature is better. That's what Bhagavan is saying. Because when you do that, there is a chance that you will exhaust the vasanas. We have studied about vasanas. Vasanas means inherent tendencies. We are all born with inherent tendency that comes through our guna, that comes through our nature. And those vasanas need to be surmounted to make spiritual progress. If by nature I am bound to get angry, I need to work on it to overcome it. Have the reins of anger in my hand, not get angry without control. That is very, very important, right? So, exhausting that vasana. When you do your duty, you exhaust vasanas. And then that results naturally towards spiritual growth. And of course, natural disposition also leads to excellent performance. Whatever I am naturally disposed to, I'll do well, I'll do better. On the contrary, when an individual strives in a field that is against one's nature, not only fails to exhaust one's vasanas, but accumulates more vasanas. So if Arjuna had left the battlefield and gone to meditation, forget about exhausting his Kshatriya vasana, Kshatriya given vasana in the battlefield. He will be accumulating more vasanas into one's own temperament. And spiritual growth is going to happen only if those are eliminated. Hence, Bhagavan says, as Bhagavan says, it is better to perform one's own duty, even if it is imperfect, than any other duty which is well performed. Giving up duties to avoid difficulty. Remember, we have studied this. This is the beauty of Bhagavad Gita. It touches upon, I'm just referring to what we have studied in detail earlier. Giving up, tyaga, duty, dharma, to avoid difficulty is rajasika tyaga. Whereas giving up likes and dislikes, I may not like to be there, but I will force myself to be there because I have to perform my duty. Giving up your life and dislike to perform duty in the face of difficulties is sattvika tyaga. You are giving up likes and dislikes. There you are giving up duty itself. Never give up duty. Give up likes and dislikes is what Bhagavan says. And he says, Swabhava niyatam karma. That karma which is ordained by one's swabhava. Niyatam. You have to do, must do. We have read about niyatam karma, right? Swabhava niyatam. Niyatam karma ordained by swabhava. Kurvan, one who does that. Na apnoti kilbisham, does not incur sin. What does it mean? Does not incur sin. Papa, it means no additional vasanas. And it also means no unnecessary mental disturbance. The sense of peace that you get by performing your duty, even if it is under difficult circumstances, even if you undergo bodily strain, but once that is done, the body is capable of handling strain, but the mind and intellect feels calmer. The mind becomes more pure, chitta shuddhi. Now, Bhagavan gives a commandment for all human beings, okay? Even for those who have an inner disposition and desire for liberation, even for them. So, as we, in life, we'll find often people, even today, why are all of us sitting in Bhagavad Gita? Because there is that desire or disposition towards liberation. And there is an amount of dispassion for materialistic life. All of us could be somewhere else partying, or doing something else. But there is the dispassion towards it. We have done it. We know what it is. And there is a dispassion. Desire for that has reduced. Desire for spiritual pursuit has increased. Even for such people, even for all of us, Bhagavan gives this commandment. And of course, for everyone. When we say even for such people, even for people who are drawn towards spiritual pursuit, that is also for them. But of course, it is for everyone else. So let us see what that commandment is.
Sahajam karma kaunteya.
Sahajam karma kaunteya.
Sadoshamapi natyajet.
Sadoshamapi natyajet.
Sarvarambha hi doshena.
Sarvarambha hi doshena.
Dhumenagnivavrataha.
Dhumenagnivavrataha.
Sahajam karma kaunteya. Sadoshamapi natyajet. सर्वारम्भा हि दोषेण धूमेनाग्निरिवावृताः
Na, do not. Tyajet, abandon. So this is instruction, okay? This is commandment from Bhagavan. Na, do not abandon. Na tyajet. Karma, action. Sahajam, born with. Api, even if. Sadosham, faulty. Kaunteya, O Arjuna. Sarvarambha, all undertakings. Sarva Arambha, all undertakings. Avritaha, are covered. He, surely. Doshena, with defect. Iva, like. Agnihi, fire. Dhumena, by smoke. So Bhagavan is saying, do not abandon. Bhagavan is instructing. Do not abandon action one is born with. Even if faulty, O Kaunteya. All undertakings are covered with defect like fire by smoke. So Bhagavan addresses Arjuna as Kaunteya. See, Bhagavan always refers to Arjuna as Kaunteya or Kunti's son. Kaunteya means Kunti. Kunti is very dear to Krishna, right? And Kunti's son comes out of extreme affection. This time he gives a very affectionate, yet he gives a command, affectionate command to Kaunteya. And his rule, his commandment is meant for all people of all times, in all situations. See, remember, I didn't say of all people for all times. Huh? I'm saying of all times. 6,000 years ago and till today. And that is why the relevance of Bhagavad Gita all through, given whatever situation it may be. Command is meant for all people of all times. For all our times also, that's understood. Anytime, in all situations. Sahajam karma. There is an ocean of difference between born with and born for. Okay? Sahajam. Saha means along with. Jam means born. Born along with karma. Karma that you are born along with. Not karma that you are born into. That is why it is very important, very critical to understand our nature, because we are born with our nature. We may be born into wherever we are born into. We may be born into a country, we may be born into any geography, we may be born into any kind of family. What is our nature is what is most critical to understand. Just because I'm the Prime Minister's son doesn't mean I should become Prime Minister, which is what we see all around us today. Just because I'm the son of the CEO, I can't become the CEO, right? So what is born with is what is referred to here, not what is born into, not the karma that one is born for. This is the karma that one is born with. The swabhava niyatam karma, in the previous verse we read about it, right? Swabhava niyatam karma. The niyatam karma, the obligatory action that comes from the swabhava, from the nature. That is sahajam karma. That karma which is ordained by swabhava. See, there are two forces that control, guide, define, determine our actions. Two primary forces. Okay, one is the impulses which are triggered from within. So what is within? Our mental temperament. So the mental temperament that arises out of our guna, the inherent tendencies form the mental temperament. The vasanas give rise to our temperament. That comes from the guna. That triggers impulses which make us act. That is the impeller of that action. That is one force that influences our action. The other force that influences our action is environmental pressure that brings forth temptation. External temptations. Internal tendencies, external temptations. These are the two forces, primary forces that control, that guide, that define and determine what we do. And Bhagavan says we must perform the former actions. What is internally impelling us, that is what we must do. What is externally, what's the word I used? What is tempting us? Bhagavan in this verse is not saying anything about it. But we have read a lot in Bhagavad Gita. External temptation will give rise to more vasana. Then we have to subdue those vasanas later. Bhagavan clearly says the instruction is whatever is that internal which comes from within, guided by guna, or rather caused by guna, guided by temperament, must perform. That is what Bhagavan is saying. The external influences, we are intelligent, that's why we are human beings. Okay? That's why I'm able to take my dog to a dog show and with the goal for the dog to win. The dog doesn't know whether it wins or not, it will bark and it will wag its tail. But the human being has the intellect. The human being has the power of the mind and the intellect. We must use that, use our discretion powered by discrimination. And also being aware of the vasanas, which are building up within us. So those who are watching this ICC World Cup, they would have seen an advertisement with Hardik Pandya. He's a barber in that advertisement and he cuts the customer's hair. And at the end of it, there's like a square tuft that is standing and the customer is shocked. He says, what have you done? He says, oh, that's a square cut. Right? And then he says, thank God I'm a cricketer, otherwise I would have played square cut with my customer's hair. Thank God I love what I do what I love. That's the ad. You would have seen that ad, interesting one. Okay. I have come across a number of professionals in my life. Okay. Extremely well educated, extremely well qualified. The best. Okay. IITs, IIMs, Harvards. I've come across so many of them. They are struggling in the office. You know why? Because they are doing work that is not aligned to their nature, or rather that is alien to their nature. We see them all the time. Excellent people, very high intellectual quotient, very high emotional quotient, but struggling. Why? Doing the work that they are doing is not what their nature is. See, there is this very popular Japanese concept, meaning a reason for being. I'm sure a lot of us would have read about Ikigai, right? Ikigai means reason for being. As per this, it's a beautiful, wonderful concept, by the way. As per Ikigai, doing what one loves and what is one good at, okay, loving and being good at, is passion-oriented. And it results in satisfaction, but also a feeling of uneasiness or uselessness. It's not uneasiness, uselessness. Doing what one is good at and what one can get paid for, that is profession-oriented, results in comfort, but a feeling of emptiness. That is what we see in our kind of society, corporate world. So most of the people are doing what they are good at and what they can get paid for, or actually what they are getting paid for. It comes from profession orientation. It results in a lot of comfort, but there is a feeling of emptiness. Doing what the world needs and what one can get paid for is mission oriented. It results in excitement, but a feeling of uncertainty. And doing what the world needs and what one loves is purpose or calling oriented, a higher calling, and results in fulfillment. But there is a feeling of lacking in material wealth. A fantastic concept, this Ikigai. And through a thorough analysis of these subsets, one finds one's true Ikigai. Okay. Traditional Japanese philosophy focuses on Ikigai to attain one's, what is that? Meaning, right? The reason for being. That is traditional Japanese philosophy. But Western material interpretation, that led to this Ikigai being turned into a method for determining or finding one's dream career. So when I first read out about Ikigai, it was entirely career focused. It took me a long time to understand, oh my God, this is not really career focus. It's actually it's almost like hoodwinking, That's not the word I was thinking of, but yeah. The true Gai means true worth. Iki means life. Finding the true worth of life. See, every culture, seeks and also offers what? A prescription for fulfillment and attainment of that feeling of being fulfilled. that ability of feeling that sense of liberation and attaining that liberation also. In Srimad Bhagavad Gita, Bhagavan issues a commandment. Okay? And that commandment, which we read in this verse, if we follow it, helps achieve both material as well as spiritual goals. And the achievement of material goals is a stepping stone for the achievement of spiritual goals. So what does he say? Nat tyajet. Do not abandon. What? Karma which is ordained by one's nature. Sahajam karma. Even if it is defective. Sadosham api. So in the material world, it will help a person following this, not abandoning Sahajam karma, will exhaust vasanas. And through exhaustion of vasanas, will improve performance. Bhagavan talked about samachara. Samachara means perform your actions to excellence. And also, the person in the material world, it will attain purushartha. Purushartha means human goals. Artha purushartha, which are wealth goals. Kama purushartha, desire goals. Dharma purushartha. What's the word? Can someone help me? Dharma purushartha in this context is well-being. Like when people consider, oh, he's a nice person. You know, that I'm forgetting the English word right now. When we are regarded well by society, that is Dharma purushartha. When everyone thinks of us as we are popular, people consider as good, people consider as, you know, worthy human, reputed. So that kind of aspect, right? And later on, I'll tell you the exact word that's there in my mind. So see, karma, it will come now. Bhagavan will just say, he made me do this. Okay, there was something, I just did this instinctively, okay? I don't know if you can see. Some insect, I don't know if it's a mosquito or something. So by this action, he will just talk about it. Dosham. Okay. So he, you know, so coming back, do not, so in the material world, let go of vasanas, perform action excellently, and attain goals. And the last purushartha is moksha purushartha. Artha, kama, dharma, moksha, purushartha. In the material world. The last one is for spiritual. The first three are material. In the pursuit of moksha purushartha, in the pursuit of spiritual goal, one by performing one's duty attains chitta shuddhi. By how does chitta shuddhi come? Same way. By letting go of vasanas, you perform actions well. By letting go of the same vasanas, your mind also gets pure. That is why when you perform action and do it well, and you have done your duty amidst difficulties, the mind feels so good, so calm, because it's pure. So the same vasana exhaustion yields to or results in attainment of goals and also in chitta shuddhi or purity of mind. And in the spiritual pursuit, also abandonment of doership and enjoyership. When you do something really excellently, there is no feeling of I did it, yeah. You know, you don't have that. See that Virat Kohli, you know, when he hit that, he just comes and he is you can see actually he's got glazed eyes. Okay, he's not that great an actor, by the way, Virat Kohli. He's a pretty bad actor. So he's not acting. He's genuinely in some zone. Genuinely. And then the interviewer asks him, and you know what, this is the last Pakistan match, by the way, for those who didn't. He played a tremendous inning. It's like that Kapil Dev's 175, the first World Cup that India won. You know, tremendous innings out of the blue, somewhere it came. And then he says, you know, interviewer says, and he says, I don't know. It just happened. He doesn't say, oh, I hit that side. No, that feeling is just not there. The sense of doership and the sense of enjoyership is gone. It's not there. What did Bhagavan teach us? That was karma sannyaasa. That comes through karma yoga. See the beauty of it. Huh? The same vasana, material goal as well as spiritual goal. That's the beauty of the Bhagavad Gita. So Bhagavan had said earlier in verse 3.5, you know, the chapter 3, verse 5. Indeed, not even anyone can certainly remain without performing action, even for a moment. Why? Because everyone is made to act helplessly by qualities born out of one's nature. Every part of creation is doing some action or the other, right? So he said, Nahi kaschit kshanamapi jatu tishtatya karma krit karyate hyavashah karma sarva prakriti jair gunaihi. So we have to act. We are impelled by our nature to act. So what is the choice is not between doing and not doing. It's very clear that we have to do. By the way, just sitting in the bed not doing anything is also doing. So you're impelled by your nature to act. So the choice is not being doing and not doing. So what is the choice that we need to make? The choice that we need to make is between performance of Swadharma and performance of Paradharma. That is the choice that we have to make. And Bhagavan says, Sarvarambha hi doshena. Every action, all undertakings, all commencements, everything has defect in it. There is a natural fault in all actions. Even breathing we cannot do without hurting millions of microbes. I did this. I mean, it's almost like Bhagavan, this verse, this part is going to come and that come and then insect got. Anything we do is inherently defective. When we eat, we deprive some other being of food. Or we deprive some other being of life. Even a sadhu meditating in the Himalayas, has some basic bodily needs. Sometimes food, sometimes water, sometimes. There are other people who fulfill those needs. Even when you're meditating in the Himalayas. But the sadhu is not doing anything else for them in return. Nothing. Selfishly takes, right? You can say it in that way. Not really, but you can put it that. But basically the point is, even a sadhu meditating in the Himalayas, that is also inherently defective action. Because he is receiving, but not giving back in that context. So there is no karma that is not defective. That's what Bhagavan says. Sarvarambha hi doshena. Sarvarambha hi doshena. Anything that is commenced is defective. So how do we know what is good and what is bad? What is good and what is not good? Bhagavan says, Dhumer agnir ivavrataha. Like fire covers smoke. So while he says that all undertakings are covered with defect, like fire covering smoke, that's what Bhagavan is saying. See, fire can be seen through a thin layer of smoke, but a thick layer of smoke that completely hides the fire. You cannot even see it. Among fuels, the fuel that generates more smoke is more defective, is of lower quality than a fuel that generates fire without smoke. Similarly, the performance of Swadharma is less defective than the performance of Paradharma. See, action is fundamentally defective. How? Action by itself, just plain simple action, will fall under the categories of Triguna, Sattva, Rajas, Tamas. Thus, the nature of action being in the ambit of Maya, that itself is the initial defect. See, we have seen, that you have to surmount for realization, for spiritual growth, you have to go above the guna. Bhagavan says in chapter 2, Traigunya Vishaya Veda, Nistraigunya Bhavarjuna. The Veda, the Karma Kanda part of the Vedas, that covers the Traiguna, the Triguna. Nistraigunya Bhavarjuna. Develop a nature which is above and beyond the Triguna. Nirdhandvaha Nitya Satvastha Niryogakshemam Atmavan. So, Nirdhandvaha, do not be in the extremities. Nitya Sattvastaha, ever be determined. Niryogakshema, don't always worry about procuring and protecting. Yoga is procuring what you don't have. Shema is protecting what you already have. And Atmavan, always be dwelling in the Supreme. So going beyond the Maya. So by virtue of being in Maya, action is defective. Number 2, all actions have doership, kartritva. every action strengthens this. I did it is what ego. It strengthens the ego. This doership strengthens the ego. All actions have enjoyership, bhoktritva. So thus, when you do action, you enjoy the results of that action. It increases dependence on the fruits, strengthens attachments. So by virtue of being in the Triguna field, it is defective. By giving that strength to the ego through doership, it is defective. By giving the strength through the attachment, through enjoyership, it is defective. A karma yogi performs the right action through the discharge of duty, swadharma, as an act of worship to Bhagavan, which is what Bhagavan said, do your duty as worship. At the very least, for a higher ideal. Virat Kohli for cricket, Federer for tennis, whatever the higher ideal is, for your organization, whatever it may be. Bhagavan says, I will manifest in that higher ideal. We don't have to think Krishna, Krishna all the time. Even if we think a higher ideal, Krishna will manifest in that. But doing devotedly for a higher cause, for the Supreme, for Bhagavan. That's how the Karma Yogi does. And Bhagavan says that inherent defect in action does not defile the person performing the action. The person is performing that action, but the inherent defect when the person is performing duty. When you're doing your duty, the inherent defect in the action, because all actions are defective, does not defile the person. Just like poison in the snake does not poison the snake. It is there in the snake. It is required for the snake, but it doesn't poison. The snake is alive and well. The bloodshed is required for Arjuna. It's defective. Bloodshed is defective. It's required for Arjuna, for any soldier. The defect in performing our duty is required for us to grow. Any of us. Why? To exhaust our vasanas, to evolve. See, oftentimes we are in situations where in today's world, we are asked to forgive, forget. Just forgive and forget, move on. If something disturbs you, close your eyes, meditate, ignore. Sit down and just meditate peacefully, let it go away, let it pass. And if you don't do that, then today's society thinks you're unfit. If someone takes courageous action, then the person or the society makes you unfit. If I take up cudgels and fight the Karnataka corrupt government, they'll make sure that I become unfit. That is today's standard of today's society. That's where we are today. This kind of letting go or tyaga is tamasic. But in some cases, we are forced to be like that. Can't help it. It is defective in that sense. See, even Sita did not, my mother said one day, Sita forgives the Rakshasas. No, Sita did not forgive the Rakshasas. Sita was only compassionate to the Rakshasas. And she was especially even a little more compassionate to Rakshasas who were nice to her. There are a few Rakshasas in that Ashokavanam who were very, very nice to Sita. She was extra compassionate to them, and she was also compassionate overall, but she was not forgiving. She instructed Rama to destroy them. In fact, there is another version of Ramayana called Adbhuta Ramayana. In Adbhuta Ramayana, Sita takes the form of Kali and she kills Ravana. It's a very interesting story, Adbhuta Ramayana. So performing action without worrying about the inherent defect as a duty, understanding what the duty is, dedicating it to the higher. See, oftentimes when we dedicate it to Bhagavan, we'll automatically do duty. Even if it is defective. We will not do paradharma. Very rarely will you do paradharma by dedicating it to the Lord. Normally, if you dedicate it to the Lord, it will be swadharma. That is the hallmark of a karma yogi. And in this way, when one performs karma yoga, Bhagavan says, na kilbisham, does not incur any sin. Over a period of time, the karma also falls away. Like petals of a flower that is ready to become a fruit. The petal automatically withers. It falls. Nobody has to do anything to it. Action drops when it has done what it has to do. See, we see this, right? Do we do action which we did as a 10-year-old today? Even if somebody tells us to do, will we start, or as a, let's say, a 2-year-old, will I start crawling on the floor, ooh, and all, will I do that? Action drops when it has done what it has to do. The same thing holds true for adults also, for mature adults also, for aged adults also. As much as we have seen through our childhood, but somehow it veils like a smoke covering the fire when we grow old. As much as a child grows out of childhood into teenager or whatever they call it, right? Adolescence, yeah. Then to adulthood. We move on from one phase to the other. The action belonging to that phase drops. When you move on from one, the brahmacharya phase, brahmacharya, grihastha, vanaprastha, sannyasa. The action belonging to the other stage, that withers off, automatically drops, automatically falls. Like clouds go away after giving rain. That's the beauty of action. Hence, karma yoga is what is most important for human beings. For all human, even those who are ready for other types of pursuits. Even jnana yoga or dhyana yoga. So we have studied all this, right? So that's why I talked about the summary. So these are all revisiting. So karma yoga, Bhagavan has covered extensively here. See, even jnana yoga, as we have studied earlier, or dhyana yoga, meditation, atma samyama yoga, right? They are liable for negligence because they require control of the senses. See, look at the beauty of karma yoga. Without control of the senses, if you do jnana or dhyana yoga, it will be negligence. But without control of the senses, you do karma yoga, which means not just karma, you dedicate it to Bhagavan, Ishwararpana Buddhi, Prasada Buddhi, and receive what comes as prasada. When you do that, when we perform karma yoga, that aspect of control of the senses happens automatically. Whenever we dedicate to the higher, we automatically start controlling our senses. Performing jnana or dhyana yoga, abandoning karma yoga is of no use. All yoga are enveloped by defects. All action, yoga is also action, no? All yoga are enveloped by defects. But karma yoga, through the power of Ishvara Arpana Buddhi and Prasada Buddhi, does not involve any stain or sin. And hence, it is also called Buddhi Yoga. We saw in chapter 2. It is also called Parama Yoga, by the way, in a lot of texts. In a number of texts, it's called Parama Yoga. Parama Yoga means Supreme Yoga. Why? Because it establishes peace in the mind, Chitta Shuddhi. Chitta Shuddhi is required for jnana. Chitta Shuddhi is required for dhyana. Chitta Shuddhi comes from Karma Yoga. Yoga, you please put, Chitta Shuddhi is required for Jnana Yoga. Chitta Shuddhi is required for Dhyana Yoga. Chitta Shuddhi comes from Karma Yoga. So how does acting in this manner become an adoration? And what is the benefit of taking action in this manner according to one's gunas? Why is this Swadharma so important? That we see in the next verse. It's already 5 o'clock.
Asakta buddhi sarvatra.
Asakta buddhi sarvatra.
Jitatma vigata sprihaha.
Jitatma vigata sprihaha.
Naishkarmya siddhim paramam.
Naishkarmya siddhim paramam.
Sannyasenadi gacchati.
Sannyasenadi gacchati.
Asakta buddhi sarvatra. Jitatma vigata sprihaha. Naishkarmya siddhim paramam. Sannyasenadi gacchati.
Asakta buddhi, whose intellect is unattached. Asakta, unattached. Sarvatra, everywhere. Jitatma, whose self is conquered. Vigata sprahaha, who is free from desires. Adhigacchati, attains. Sannyasena, by renunciation or through renunciation. Siddhim paramam, supreme perfection. Naishkarmya, transcending all action. So Bhagavan is saying, one whose intellect is unattached everywhere, whose self is conquered, who is free of desires, attains by renunciation the supreme perfection, transcending all actions. See, people lost in samsara, in this material world, completely submerged in the material world, miss out on performing duties. And when this continues over a period of time, sometimes janma after janma after janma, then they get confused, they get frustrated, they get depressed. That all those aspects come from not performing one's duty. And in such a state, they tend to take shortcut, drastic action, and then dive into jnana yoga or dhyana yoga without necessary preparation. So we see that all around us, people all around us, okay? Uncooked partial knowledge, appearing wise, but floundering internally. We see it all around us, right? In fact, as we pursue spiritually, we must hope, pray, and work towards not being that ourselves. Appearing wise outside and floundering in. We have to solidify internally. It's difficult, but we must. We also see people sitting in one place, closing their eyes, meditating, appearing to meditate rather, right? But the mind is wandering all over. These people, they perform jnana yoga or dhyana yoga with negligence. And the practice of this continuously then leads to defective action which gets wasted. When somebody forgets spirituality, there is a dignity in being spiritual also, spiritual dignity, and that is forgotten. The misconception of the ego arises. The sense of I veils the real self. See, I'm going to talk about jitatma. That is why this is important for us to understand. What is this jitatma? Conquering the self. So when we forget the dignity of a human being is by nature spiritual, right? And the misconception of this ego comes about, the sense of I dominates, and that hides the real self. This false self is what prevails. And this false self revels in I want, I want. And it flits like a butterfly from one joy to another joy. And not attaining any fulfillment, by the way. But at the same time experiencing increasing desires. Desires keep increasing, one joy to another joy, fulfillment not there. One who has performed duties sincerely to perfection, devoting it to Bhagavan as an offering to Bhagavan, accepting the results as his prasada, that person who has performed this karma yoga, and in the process accepting difficulties as sadhana, right? So we have to, even under difficulty, we have to perform karma yoga, and keeps on going in this fashion, day after day, week after week, year after year, throughout the life. For such a person, over a period of time, the personality evolves spiritually. And how does this evolution manifest, this kind of a spiritual evolution? Bhagavan says, Sarvatra asakta buddhi. Sarvatra, towards all, in all facets of life, 100% holistically, asakta buddhi, free of attachment. The aspect of I want goes away. The intellect is completely detached from the sensuous things in the material world. They are there. It's not like you will not enjoy your cup of coffee or something. The sensuous aspects of the material world are meant to give joy and experienced, but you are not attached. We have read about this in detail earlier. A clean-shaven intellect, devoid of attachments. See, in fact, I read somewhere the symbolic, I think Swami Chinmayananda, symbolic clean-shaven head in Sannyaasa is meant to indicate asakta buddhi. Okay, my clean-shaven is still not there, by the way, in asakta buddhi. I have to get there. But in Sannyaasa, the clean, you see Sannyasi is clean-shaven head. It is meant to indicate, symbolizes asakta buddhi. Vigata spriha, the sense of I want is gone. And when that sense of I want is gone because of asakta buddhi, there is absolutely no desire left. Vigata spraha. You enjoy everything, you revel in what is there. You are not hankering for what is not there. Desire is hankering for what is not there. And when hankering for what is not there stops, reveling in what is there happens. Jitatma. Such a person conquers that false sense of the self, which has veiled the real self. When I and I want are gone, the sense of I do, that kartritva, is conquered. And this revels in the true self, this kind of a person, or the supreme self, which earlier was veiled by attachments and by desires. Thus, for this person, Jnana Yoga naturally occurs. See, you get to this stage through Karma Yoga. And when you get to this stage, Jnana Yoga naturally occurs. Even what you don't know, some of it comes through intuition, some of it comes through correct pursuit of Jnana Yoga. Through the maturity that comes from the performance of Karma Yoga. And then Sannyaasena, giving up through Tyaga, all attachments, desires and individuality. Sannyaasena. Naishkarmya, while performing action, the person is actionless. You're doing Virat Kohli's statement. He did magic. He just created magic there, okay? And the team won. Everyone was reveling. It was crazy for those who were watching. He was actionless, absolutely actionless. That is a beautiful example in today's context of Naishkarmya. You must go see that in for you to understand Naishkarmya. Actionless, in the midst of action, performing all the actions. And with this ignorance, okay, the Ajnani aspect, the ignorance of what? The attribution to ego, I did it, that is gone away. And with that gone, with that removed, the unveiling of the real supreme self, that comes about, resulting in experience of infinite bliss. And that kind of a person then revels in that experience only. This is the state of Dhyana Yoga, where you revel in the supreme self. This is the true Dhyana Yoga state that comes about naturally through Karma Yoga and Jnana Yoga. See how beautiful it is, huh? Adhigacchati, Bhagavan says, attains. The first step is attainment of Karma Yoga through Ishwararpana Buddhi, Prasada Buddhi. Then attaining Jnana Yoga from the maturity of Karma Yoga. Then attaining Dhyana Yoga from the maturity of Karma Yoga and Jnana Yoga. And then Bhagavan says, Adhigacchati, what? Paramam Siddhim, supreme perfection. The state of perfection that cannot be gained by escaping the field of action. Making use of the field of action, that person gains in purity of the self, purity of the mind, gets rid of the vasanas, performs selfless activities, thereby learns more and more through Jnana Yoga, thereby is able to revel in the supreme self. Through performance of action that is driven by the guna and the varna. I'm not going to do the last verse, okay? So I'll just recite one story before I finish. The next, see, you said 4 verses. It's only going to be 3 verses. So when it was time for Sri Krishna to leave the planet, his cousin and charioteer Uddhava, he asked the Lord to take him along. See, we have read about Uddhava Gita earlier. Huh? That was another context. That's also a beautiful story. Here, he says, Bhagavan, please take me along. Bhagavan says, he said, Rama took people along when he went. Bhagavan says, while Sri Rama could do that in Treta Yuga, it is not possible today in my time when Dwapara Yuga is giving way to Kali Yuga. It's not possible. So Uddhava, you will have to make your own way. And my advice to you is to please go to the Himalayas and meditate. What did Sri Krishna tell Arjuna? Don't go to the Himalayas, fight the war. And Sri Krishna tells Uddhava, please go to the Himalaya and meditate. And he also cautioned him that he could face problems on the way because of deterioration of human values in Kali Yuga. A lot of times saints are abused, by the way. And to assuage the worried Uddhava, Bhagavan narrates Bhikshu Gita. Bhikshu Gita is part of Uddhava Gita in the Srimad Bhagavatam. It's a beautiful story. Obviously, I can't cover the whole of it. And obviously, this happened before Sri Krishna's time. So this is cycle of the world, cycle of Kala or Samsara. And Krishna says, once upon a time in Avanti, lived a wealthy, yet miserly, greedy, passionate, aggressive, unworthy Brahmin who pursued the vocation of agriculture and trade. See, all the four varnas in one person. Unworthy Brahmin lived a wealthy, but wealthy Vaishya, miserly, greedy Shudra, passionate, aggressive Kshatriya, but Brahmin in terms of the environment. Neither relatives nor guests were honored by him, and his own family and servants were pained and disgusted because he had all the money, would not, didn't have the attitude. Everybody was disgusted. He was lost in samsara. So this was his state of life. Having everything, but everyone around him disappointed, upset, he not sharing. But the time came when he lost everything. All the wealth he earned was lost. Some seized by relatives, some taken by tax by the government, some lost, stolen by robbers, some through Kala. These are all beautiful verses you should read. All this is there in Sanskrit, okay, through Kala. And he became absolutely destitute, discarded by everyone. And he reflected in his wasted life. So the pendulum swung from one extreme to the other extreme. And in that extreme situation, he thought about his wasted life with a sense of acceptance and dispassion, not with a sense of depression. So resolving to be dispassionate, he abandoned desires and adopted the life of a mendicant. Mendicant means beggar, and a wandering monk. He used to go around begging. And this person, people ill-treated him. And they also knew his background. They ill-treated him even more. Kicked him, beat him up, tied him. In fact, the Bhikshu Gita says urinated on him, ridiculed him, threatened him. Does this sound familiar? When I was reading this, I said, oh my God, have you seen the movie Guide? It's a beautiful Devanand movie, okay? I think it's been taken from here only. So Devanand, whatever his background was, he was wandering monk, people beat him up and all that. Anyway, he reconciled with all of this. And he said, this is a result of my doings. What I did, I'm bhuktoing now. Whatever my karma was, now has become my prarabdha. And I need to work it out. And how am I going to work it out? He had a path to work it out. That's the beauty of the Bhikshu Gita. And resorting to this firmness of the Sattvika type, he sings the Bhikshu Gita. It's quite beautiful, by the way. I'll just do one line. It says, Nayam jano me sukha dukkha heturna devatma graha karma kalaha manaparam karana mam ananti samsara chakram parivartaye hetu. See, neither these people who are hurting me, who are insulting me, nor any deity, Deva, Bhagavan, nor the self, nor the stars, nor the karma, nor Kala, none of this is responsible for my joys and sorrow. It is the mind alone that is the wheel of worldly existence. My mind made me that miser, the person who caused misery everywhere. And my mind is now making me go through this. See, the Bhikshu Gita itself is much longer and it's beautiful. Very deep it goes to. But the point is that even those who are living in the pits of samsara, whose pendulum is swinging from one extreme to the other, even they, by purifying their mind through action, through performing of their duty, and control of their mind through renunciation, through tyaga, attain perfection. Now, I'm going to skip the next verse. It's already 5:15, okay, which I had planned to do. Now, Bhagavan will talk about, see, perfection itself is a spiritual goal, what we have studied today, right? Bhagavan shares how a perfect person attains Brahman. And after that, through intense bhakti and bhakti yoga, intense bhakti in that Brahman, enters the Brahman. the culmination of the beautiful teachings of Bhagavad Gita coming to us now in the next few satsang. We'll go through that. It's quite beautiful. So today we talked about Karma Yoga, Jnana Yoga, Dhyana Yoga. Now, either next satsang or the following, we'll come to Bhakti Yoga also. Hari Om, Shri Krishna. We'll conclude.
We'll repeat today's verses.
Yeah.
Chapter 18, 47 to 41. Shreyan swadharmo vigunaha paradharmat swanushtitat स्वभावनियतं कर्म कुर्वन्नाप्नोति किल्बिषम् सहजं कर्म कौन्तेय सन्दोषमपि न त्यजेत् सर्वारम्भा हि दोषेण धूमेनाग्निरिवावृताः असक्तबुद्धि सर्वत्र चित्तात्मा विगतस्पृहः नैष्कर्म्य सिद्धिं परमां सन्न्यासीनाधिगच्छति। ॐ असतो मा सद्गमय तमसो मा ज्योतिर्गमय मृत्योर्मा अमृतं गमय। ॐ पूर्णमदः पूर्णमिदं पूर्णात् पूर्णमुदच्यते पूर्णस्य पूर्णमादाय पूर्णमेवावशिष्यते। ॐ शान्ति शान्ति शान्तिः। हरिः ॐ श्री गुरुभ्यो नमः। हरिः ॐ।
Hari Om. Any thoughts, comments, or questions? Thank you, Kushagra. You don't, nowadays Kushagra doesn't say anything. Earlier used to speak up a lot.
Hari Om Sridhi, like everything ages well. So trying to consume more rather than, speaking more. I've been reading about it, but yeah, will come if I have any doubts.
Okay, if no thoughts or comments or questions, then 1 second, Jayakar is saying something. Smoke from clean fuel versus dirty. Yeah, that's right. Yeah, clean, impure. Some fuel gives rise to a lot of smoke. Some fuel, it burns more efficiently. So yeah, Swadharma is definitely less defective than Paradharma. Every dharma, every action is defective. Swadharma is much less defective. Thank you all. Hari Om. So we'll meet next satsang, next Saturday. Hari Om.